right, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Today is May 29th, 2018, and we are here to do two things today. First, we have a public hearing, and then we have the regular meeting of the Board of Water Supply. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of today's public hearing is to consider the proposed 2018 to 2019 operating and capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018. So this is a very important matter, as this is what allows the board to continue operating. So it's important that we have this heard and get it adopted. A notice of the public hearing did appear in the May 19th, 2018 Honolulu Star Advertiser newspaper, which is a newspaper of general circulation. And I believe we also discussed it the last board meeting as well. And last board meeting is on television on Olelo. Say hi to the camera. No. But before beginning today's public hearings, I would like to reiterate that the board's mission is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and affordable supply of water to our customers. One of the best ways that we can ensure that this occurs is to thoughtfully plan and fund a regular program of water facility replacement and improvement as reflected in the annual operating and capital improvement program budget we are considering today. On May 14th, 2018, a budget informational meeting was held, and the meeting was also subject to sunshine notice. This meeting outlined the department's goals and objectives and the proposed operating and CIP budgets for fiscal year 2018 to 2019. Before officially opening the public hearing, I would like to ask our manager, Mr. Ernest Lau, and chief engineer to give a brief statement on the budget that we are considering today.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Board of Water Supply. Appreciate you. It is an honor to serve the Board of Water Supply and to great honor to be its manager and chief engineer. Never thought I'd be in this position. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2018 to 2019 consists of the operating budget of around $186.3 million and the capital improvement program budget of around $138.5 million. The operating budget provides for operational maintenance costs for continuing water service to our customers, while the capital improvement program budget provides for funding for research and facility replacement costs, as well as funding of major water system additions or expansions. Our staff will continue to right-size our operating budget in order to maximize ratepayer monies and to effectively and efficiently operate the department. The capital improvement program budget will continue to grow as outlined in the Water Master Plan and a long-range financial plan. And I appreciate the board's support in adopting those two plans as policy for the department. Mahalo. This investment in our infrastructure is needed to eventually reduce main breaks over time and to improve the reliability of our water system. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Robert Morita, head of our Executive Support Office, and Mr. Jason Takaki, the Program Administrator of our Capital Projects Division, to provide you with an overview of the details of the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget, operating and CIP. Thank you. Robert?
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair Andaya, board members. Again, Robert Morita from the Executive Support Office. Part of our responsibility is the development of the annual budget for the department. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize Stuart Wong. He's our budget program specialist. As I mentioned the last time, he does all the heavy lifting involved with the budget, the number crunching, the putting together of the various documents, basically everything that goes into putting a budget together. So thank you to Stuart again for doing a great job of putting everything together for us.
Stuart is very shy. He's actually in the back row there. Thank you.
So today's presentation is almost identical to the workshop presentation from 2 weeks ago. So I'll try to go through it fairly quickly, but if you have any questions, additional questions, please ask if anything comes your way. And let's turn this on. Okay. So as far as the fiscal year 2019 operating budget goes, in summary, we are looking at an increase of $2.7 million for revenues, about a 1.2% increase, and total operating expenditures, that's actually a decrease of $5.7 million, or about a 3% decrease for the operating budget. Overall, looking at it from both revenues, carryover amounts, and expenditures, this is what we saw from in looking at the fiscal year 2017 actuals, what we estimate the 2018, we're currently in fiscal year 2018. This is the estimated actual that we're projecting for the remainder of this year, and what we have presented in the fiscal year 2019 budget. So the bottom line takeaway in this particular table is what we call the carryover amounts. And every year, it's like your checking account. So how you have a beginning balance. And I equate it not only to your checking account, but it's like your check register, how most of us, I think, keep track of your checkbook balances. And so what happens is whenever, like in your checking account, when it's time for a new check register, you change your document. So that's like the changeover in fiscal year. But what you do is you take the total off your previous check register and you carry it over into the beginning. And so effectively, that's what we mean by the carryover balance. And that's the equivalent here. So in 2019, what we're looking at is we're projecting a $98.3 million starting point. Beginning balance for our funds. And when you take into account the anticipated revenues, anticipated expenditures, both from the operating as well as capital, since we do spend some cash out of capital, we are still projecting a $32.6 million ending balance at the end of fiscal year 19. Any question? Or?
Yeah, so I noticed,
Sure.
Mr. Morita, our ending balance for the last couple of years, starting in 2017, has decreased.
Decreased slightly.
And it's because it's an effort on our part to try to fund
More CIP
more
projects?
CIP projects, which hopefully will translate into more water main break repairs.
More pipeline projects, or also fixing our pump stations, our water tanks, and our facilities.
Okay, thank you.
And part of it is actually a mix too, because when you're looking at those ending balances, the first column we're talking about actuals. So that in terms of the accounting total for a closed fiscal period, that's what we're looking at. 2018, 2019, a lot of it, some of it has projections built in as well. So it tends to be a little more conservative, because what we don't want to end up is on the wrong side of a projection where we're short. So it tends to be generally on the lower side.
And
So-
remember that the close of the fiscal year is actually June 30th of each year. So this is still in May, so we have to do some projections on what that might be to the end of the fiscal
Right.
year.
Right. So that 98.3, in all likelihood, will end up being higher once we close out the fiscal year and the final accounting is done. But thank you for that. So looking at the FY 2019 budget, which is before you, it's a total budget of including capital is $311.4 million. As you can see, personnel services, so basically our labor costs, is about 16% of the total. Material supplies and services, 20%. Equipment, 2%. Debt service at 7%. Fixed charges, which includes things like electricity, the retirement, health benefits at 16%, and our CIP program at about 39%. Here in this chart, you'll also see a new pie piece. It's what we call, broadly speaking, we're calling waivers. And this will include, this is a placeholder amount, because when we do come before the board to talk about the new rates which includes certain waivers of fees. We inserted a placeholder amount just so that we do have basically the authorization to go ahead and proceed with authorizing waivers. And this largely involves the water system facility charge.
Something for the board's consideration in the next few months is the possible waiver of the water system facility charge as an impact fee to encourage the community values of affordable housing, addressing development of more homeless units, and also fire sprinkler retrofits or high-rise condominium or apartment buildings without fire sprinkler systems.
And our intention in the coming fiscal year is to provide quarterly, I think, updates of the waivers, just to see how many have been coming through and how many have been granted up to that point in time.
So the 500,000 is kind of a placeholder if the board decides to determine a amount that is higher than that. The budget can be adjusted. The carryover balance at the end of the year might shift a little bit based on what's being projected here.
So this chart is the operating budget expenditures. It basically just shows the year-over-year difference. You'll see that FY19 is actually lower than the 2018 budget. And the biggest difference really comes from the difference in the debt service total, $31.6 million down to $21.7 million. All other areas are effectively at same levels as previous. Highlights of the operating budget includes the aforementioned reduction in debt service amounts of $9.9 million. There's a $2.8 million increase in funding for personnel services, and we will get into the personnel side of the budget more in depth shortly. There's a $1.8 million increase in funding for water quality and treatment studies, $1 million increase in funding for emergency road repairs, and also a $1.2 million decrease in funding for the purchase of meters. Here we see a larger spread over different fiscal years of the operating budget, which also includes the cash portion of the CIP. So as you can see that in FY19, right, as shown in the previous slides, that 2019 is slightly below what we had budgeted for fiscal year 2018. On the revenue side, that's the other component of the budget after expenditures. Revenues, we are basically projecting a relatively flat budget. We don't anticipate any major increase in consumption. Also factored into that is that for fiscal year 19, there's no water rate increases programmed. So it's basically FY19, the projection is primarily due to a stable potable water consumption over the near term. This chart shows you the comparison of revenues to expenditures, and the basic takeaway from this is that revenues are higher than expenditures, which if you're doing a budget, that's where you want to be. You don't want to be on the opposite side of that equation.
But we're also, if you can go back to that chart, trying to close the gap between budget versus actual as we go on each year.
All right, so talking about positions and vacancies, this is the biggest change, I think, in the budget, and that we're coming before the board through this budget action to actually request for additional positions in our department's budget. And just to give you some background on this, during the recession years that span largely between 2007 and 2009, the Board of Water Supply implemented a hiring freeze that reduced employee counts. The BWS hiring freeze was in place roughly between 2008 and early 2012. And the department held many positions vacant in order to generate budget savings. Vacancies at supervisory levels, just for your information, especially at the supervisory levels, creates this cascading effect of subsequent vacancies that really takes more time to fill. Because of our process here, where we look to provide promotional opportunities for employees, in order for us to fill a supervisory position, it's generally offered internally to existing BWS staff. And so what happens is that if a person is selected, then it creates a subsequent vacancy that we need to fill, and sometimes this can cascade down for like 3 or 4 levels. So while on paper it looks like we're simply filling a single position, which is actually true, there's this large domino effect that sometimes occurs as a result. Some of the positions that were held vacant range from journey type positions down to apprentices. And that in itself also is a challenge, in that in the trades area, there needs to be a specific ratio of journey positions to apprentices. And so a journey position without apprentices sometimes occurs, or vice versa. And if you don't have enough journey positions in order to train your apprentices, you can't necessarily go ahead and fill as many apprentices as you want. You need to maintain a certain ratio. And so that's often the challenge in filling these types of positions. So we're definitely affected by that, and it's a balancing act that needs to occur. We just wanted to remind the board that through the budget process is how we go ahead and take care or manage positions, really. So all positions need to be budgeted in the operating budget. All requests for new positions must be submitted through the annual operating budget. And so that's where the board takes action to approve or not approve specific budget actions. The current practice is that new position requests, let me back up. So our current process is within the department, if there is a request for new positions, the first place that we'll look at is existing vacancies. The last thing that we really want to do is come before the board to ask for additional positions, additional authorization to create positions. So we do have a practice of trying to utilize as many vacant positions as possible before we come to the board. And for a number of years, we have been successful in doing that. On this chart, I won't go through this one, and I won't ask Michelle to go through it again. But what all this shows really is that there is a very prescriptive, deliberate civil service process that we need to follow. And it's effectively the same process that the city has to follow as well. As a department with our own human resources department, we do have some streamlining that's in effect, but largely all the checks and balances and all the approvals that are required in order for us to recruit and fill a position is being followed. So while we can streamline certain things, it doesn't allow us to shortcut anything. In the budget, when we talk about positions, oftentimes we'll use a couple of terms fairly frequently. One is authorized positions, and these are the permanent civil service positions that's created by board action. The other types that you may hear about is personal services contracts, and these types of positions are used for limited durations that may be used for temporary workload staffing or to perform duties while a position is being recruited. And as I mentioned, we look internally as much as possible before asking for new positions. And just to let the board know that since 2015, the Board of Water Supply, we have actually either reclassified or abolished 52 positions in order to offset the creation of new positions. So it's a net zero effect. So we've been able to take care of our internal position needs since 2015 by 52 positions. And just to show you, so the 714 that I'm showing on the next few slides, that's our current authorized count. So that's our current authorized number of positions in the Board of Water Supply for permanent positions. So as you can see, going back to only to the year 2000, we held steady at 714. Since then, Honolulu's population has increased by approximately 100,000, 120,000 people. So we're servicing a lot more people. The number of miles of pipeline in that same time period has also increased, but still we've maintained the 714 authorized position count. The number of services, the number of accounts that we have here at the Board of Water Supply in that same time has also increased by about 30,000. And then this is from our master plan, but the water demand also we've been able to hold it in check, but at the same time, this blue area here represents the population increases. But through conservation programs here at Board of Water is that we've been able to keep in check, I guess, the amount of consumption per person or in total on Oahu through various efforts. So it doesn't mean necessarily that with the increase in population comes an increase in consumption. We've been using other methods and means to try and mitigate that effect. And you've heard it several times before, but the Water Master Plan calls for pipeline replacement of about 6 miles per year that we're currently doing right now. And the plan is to increase it to about 21 miles per year in the next 10 years. In order to do this, staffing in our capital projects division must increase in order to meet the increased workload. And in turn, support staffing throughout the department within Board of Water Supply must also increase. So when we take a look at our current vacancy levels, right now, the Board of Water Supply has current vacancies of 181 out of the 714 positions. And while that may seem like a large number, we haven't been inactive. I don't know how to say it, but we've been busy. We've been busy trying our best to fill these positions. And it shows in this middle column. So these are all of the hiring requests and what we call Form A's that are in process right now, and they're in different stages. Some of them could be brand new requests, all the way through we're on the verge of actually hiring an employee to take that place. But out of the 181 vacancies that we have in the department, 151 are actively in process. And so this begs the question, so why does hiring take so long? Many of our requests involve reorganizations and reclassifications. Sometimes job duties evolve, but in order for us to create a new job class, a new job title that correctly recognizes the duties as well as commensurate pay levels for those positions, it's a lengthy process. It takes years as often is the case. And we see this most frequently in this department in our water systems operations and field operations divisions, where we do have several reorganization requests, which in turn also requires reclassification of certain positions. And so that tends to affect the timeline as far as when we can actually fill positions. But it's a necessary step in order for us to evolve as a department, and it just takes time. Our current vacancy challenges includes we do have difficulty in recruiting in general. It's the same as the city, same as the state, and actually we're seeing it being noticed in the private sector as well. So right now there's record low unemployment, there's salary competition, especially for us here in government, that combined with reduced benefits in order that were undertaken in order to mitigate costs by the employer in government. Certain positions are difficult to fill, especially in the engineering and the information technology area. And this is what the unemployment rate looks like right now. This one only goes to January, but Honolulu is the red line, the lower line. And Honolulu right now is looking at about an unemployment rate of about 1.8%. It's incredibly low right now. So it makes choices a lot more challenging. We do get applicants, but it's a totally different market than what it was just a few years ago. Here's a couple of stories here. So in the media, they talked about the city's struggles in order to not only hire, but to keep qualified employees. So the city at that time was experiencing around about 17% vacancy levels throughout the whole city and county. There was also a recent article in Civil Beat, and this was talking about it broadly in that not only in government, but overall, Hawaii is having difficulty in finding qualified employees for certain job sectors. So, as mentioned, we are looking at the board for approval of this budget, and in turn, it would be authorization to create new positions. And so in total, there are 27 positions that are being requested to the board, and the list is before you. There's 4 positions in the Executive Support Office, 1 in HR, 1 in Communications, 3 in the Customer Care Division, 1 in Capital Projects, and here's the one that kind of jumps out is there are 14 water data collection clerks. They used to be called meter readers. 14 of these positions being requested, as well as 3 in IT, for a total of 27. This was asked at the budget workshop the last time. It was noted that capital projects with the accelerated CIP program needing to get us to 21 miles, it was noted that, that there was only 1 engineering position being requested in the capital projects division. But we just wanted to point out that yes, it is only 1 for this coming fiscal year in 2019. But prior to that, in the current budget in fiscal year 2018, there was actually 13 positions in capital projects that were created. And so here's a summary of all of the positions that were authorized in the FY18 budget. And all of these positions were offset by corresponding vacancies. So there was a net 0 growth in terms of the number of positions. So in short, the position changes for 2019 is, so 18 permanent positions are being requested, 9 positions that are classified as limited term. So meaning that the positions are being created, and these will be civil service positions, but the appointments, when the hiring is done, it will be done on a limited term basis. And so that will give us the opportunity to perhaps utilize these positions in the future. Once the need is no longer there, it will allow us to utilize these positions in the future through board action. Offsetting the 27 positions that are being created, there will be a reduction of 22 personal services contracts. So there should be an offsetting both count as well as dollars. And we just wanted to point out to the board that this request for 27 new positions is the first increase since fiscal year 1992. So the department has done a tremendous job, I think, of living within their means for decades. Yeah, decades. And so in summary, when we're talking about positions, we're looking to increase our authorized position count from 714 positions to 741, which is comprised of 732 permanent positions and 9 limited term. And unless there are any questions about the operating side?
Chair, I have a question. If you go back to the 52 positions that you characterized as abolished, were they truly abolished and deleted off the board, or did you recharacterize them and reallocate them into other things?
Oh, okay. There were a handful, I think, that were through the reclassification process that we maintained. I would say out of the 52, it was, I don't know the exact number, but it was less than 10. So the remaining 40-something were actual abolishments, and then we created positions through the budget process.
Okay.
Members?
Okay. If
Thank
not,
you.
Then I'd like to bring up Jason Takaki to talk about.
Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, Chair Andayo, Vice Chair Sproat, board members. My pleasure this afternoon to present the FY19 Capital Improvement Program. The Capital Improvement Program continues to be the department's most significant undertaking. The program represents the immediate needs for continuous delivery of water and the continued operation and maintenance of our facilities. This year's program is crafted around the Board of Water Supply's mission of water for life, safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. It is aligned with the Water Master Plan, the department's strategic plan, and the goals and objectives of the divisions in support of that plan, and also the Board of Water Supply's long-range capital improvement program. As in previous years, the organization of the CIP is unchanged. Research and development explores new resources and provides for system improvement needs. $4.4 million is proposed in this category. Renewal and replacement includes the needs of the existing, addresses the needs of the existing water infrastructure, and $92.1 million is proposed in this category. Finally, the third category encompasses projects for capacity expansion of water supply facilities, and $23.4 million is proposed for these projects. Now, this table provides a matrix of the totals by funding sources and the project categories. $110.4 million will be provided from the operating fund, and an additional $8.2 million in operating funds will be appropriated for projects that are SRF eligible. That is, they can be funded through low-interest loans from the Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Fund that's administered by the State Department of Health. Finally, $19.9 million will be provided from the Special Expendable Fund. This slide illustrates the distribution of our projects around the island of Oahu as we manage and maintain an island-wide water infrastructure. And yes, sorry.
Sorry, we don't have the map.
Took it down.
there today. I know you. I saw you looking.
Yeah. Our division heads and staff officers are here to describe in greater detail any specific project in the FY19 Capital Improvement Program, but I'd first like to present the highlights of the proposed CIP. First of all, in Category 1, Research and Development, we will continue to use construction management services for selected projects to increase our capabilities and capitalize on training opportunities to increase in-house construction management competencies. Professional project and program management services will be available to address one-time project efforts and to support our staff as we build in-house management capacity. Finally, we will initiate an effort to assess the condition of our transmission mains island-wide to avoid catastrophic failure and proactively address the highest risk components of the water system. In Category 2, Renewal and Replacement, we address the needs of the existing water infrastructure. Pump renewal and replacement projects address the needs identified by our engineers and the Water System Operations Division. Major repairs are scheduled for our Waimanalo 230 reservoir and the Waialaiki 180 reservoir that's pictured in the background here. Improvements will be made to extend the lives of our granular activated carbon water treatment facilities, and we will continue with phase 2 of our meter transponder replacement efforts, and also continue our efforts to safeguard all BWS facilities. Category 2, renewal and replacement also includes the needs of an aging water main infrastructure. Our largest asset is the underground transmission and distribution system, and just under $49 million is allocated for pipelines. 7 miles of pipeline replacement are scheduled for FY19 in construction, and these are in areas including Moanalua Valley, Waianae, Lanakila, Hawaii Kai, and Pacific Heights. And this is in line with our target of getting to 21 miles in FY27, as you can see from the graph on the right. Also in support of our expanding pipeline replacement program, new pipeline replacement design projects will be initiated for 18.5 miles of water mains to address aging infrastructure in areas ranging from Pupukea to Kaneohe to Palolo. Category 2 renewal and replacement also includes the appurtenances of a robust water system. In FY19, we will address fire protection in Kailua with a project to install almost 60 new fire hydrants. We will make needed improvements to the pipeline tunnel at Makapu'u. And just over 400 plastic service laterals that have prematurely reached the end of their service lives will be replaced in Kunia. Finally, the capacity expansion category includes these projects. Metro 180 storage will be supplemented with a new 2 million gallon reservoir on the slopes of Papakolea. We will improve transmission capacity to Waikiki, initiating the design of an upsized water main along Ala Moana Boulevard. We will address the evolving maintenance needs of the water system with a new base yard in Kapolei at the site of the brackish water desalination facility. And we will begin design of a new combination office building and parking structure here at Beretania. This proposed office building is a long lead time component of a multi-pronged effort to meet the space demands of the workforce required to address an expanding CIP. It'll be situated in the Mauka Diamond Head employee parking lot, and the building will provide needed staff space and eventually serve as swing space for the modernization of the historic structures here on the Beretania complex. To ensure best and highest use of all real property assets, a master plan will soon be initiated for all facilities around the island. As necessary, we will investigate leasing office space, but we'll first look to optimize use of existing space here at the complex. Major renovation project will follow, and they will bring our existing buildings up to current building codes, including accessibility improvements in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Modernization of the engineering building, which was dedicated in 1939, and will be followed by modernization of this iconic public service building, which was dedicated in 1958. Finally, work is continuing on an environmental impact statement for a future mixed-use development on the EVA side, employee, and the equipment lot, so this side of the complex. Okay, so back to the CIP. In total, the $138.5 million capital improvement program carefully balances the requirements of ensuring safe and dependable water delivery with cost-effective resource allocation. So as I said at the beginning, our division heads and staff officers are here to describe in greater detail any specific project in the FY19 CIP and answer any questions you may have.
Members? Right.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn it back to Mr. Morita to summarize. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaka.
Okay, just to wrap things up, in terms of the budget, when we are currently in a process right now of adopting new rates, and I'm sure as board members you get approached by members of the public, friends, family even, saying, you know, don't only raise my rates, why don't you take a look internally and see what you can do to reduce costs. There's always two parts of the equation in terms of a budget. So this slide right before you is the annual operating budgets. The These are the adopted and proposed budgets over the last 5 years. And as you can see, the budgets were increasing between 2015 and 2017. But since then, we've made a concerted effort to right-size the budgets as much as possible, and we will continue to do that as part of our annual operating budget process. And over the last 2 fiscal years, we've been able to bring the budgets down almost $25 million in terms of programmed budgets. But those planned expenditures didn't just disappear. They were invested in our capital projects area. And so here, and the capital budget is a little bit different than, say, from the operating side. The operating budget has recurring costs. You know, there's the labor, the biggest one is the labor component, which is there. This is why we tread so carefully in terms of adding new positions, because once you add a position, once you add an employee, it's very difficult to control that cost. It's a cost that will stay with you. The capital expenses is just depending on the program. But as you can see, so there is some variation in the capital projects over the years, but what you will see from here on out is a progressive ramp up of the CIP budgets. And so what we are committed to do is to continuously look within ourselves to ensure that the dollars are being budgeted in the right areas. And so when those friends, families ask you about that, taking a look at the budgets and spending, you can talk about this last slide here. And so when we look at the 2018 versus the 2019 budgets, you can say that the operating budget for fiscal year 19 is $5.1 million lower than in fiscal year 18, or a $2.7 million decrease, and the CIP budget also is lower by almost $5.9 million, or about a $4.1 million decrease. So a total year-over-year budgetary decrease of $11 million, or about 3%. And that's all I have. Any other questions?
Any questions?
Members? All right, thank you, Mr. Morita.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Jason.
Okay, so following this presentations, and thank you very much to Manager Lau, to Mr. Morita, Mr. Takaki, and everyone else who put the budget together and made the presentations. We appreciate your efforts. At this time, we'd like to take testimony, if there is any, on the proposed budget. Due to time constraints, we ask that those presenting testimonies limit your presentations to 3 minutes each. The public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to testify on the proposed budget, please come forward and state your name and the organization you represent before proceeding with your testimony. Okay, last call for public testimony on the budget today. Oh, I thought you guys were all gonna make presentations. Hearing no one, hearing no response to our call for public testimony, I'd like to close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. Members, if you have no further questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the budget as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the proposed budgets? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the budget for 2018, 2019 operating and capital improvement program budgets are approved.
Mahalo, Board. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. I'd like to resume our regular meeting of the Board of Water Supply, moving to the items requiring board action. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 23rd, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, corrections, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Moving right along, we did have, following the regular meeting, we did have a budget workshop on May 14th, 2018, which was a public, subject to sunshine as well. And so we have some minutes also included. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Corrections, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, next item is the adoption of resolution number 887, 2018. This is, I guess, the formal adoption of the operating and capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year 2018 to 2019 and appropriating funds therefore.
Yeah, you actually,
We already did it, right? Okay. So I am going to, that was already done. Moving on to the items for information. First, we have the update on the water rate study and public hearings.
I'm sorry, Board Chair, can we double check with the board's attorney to see that the motion and action by the board during the public hearing is adequate to satisfy that action during the regular board meeting for the adoption of the budget? I just want to make sure that there's no question that the operating budget and the CIP budget, capital improvement program budget, was actually adopted, and it can be reflected as adopted.
Maybe while Mr. Lee checks, maybe we can continue on with the
Okay, thank you, Chair.
items for information, and just let us know when you're ready.
Okay, Mahalo.
Okay,
Just
so,
pass it one more time then.
Just to be
Make a
safe.
motion, we
pass it one more, just to be sure,
resolution number 887.
just to be sure, okay.
I will feel much more comfortable.
Moved by Mr. Hulahe. Do I hear a second? A second by Mr. Soon. All those in favor, this is for the adoption of resolution number 887, 2018. I'll spare you having to read it.
Thank you.
Say aye.
All right.
All those opposed say nay. All right,
Wow.
it's
We're
approved,
good.
just to make sure.
Yeah.
All right, on to the water rate study and public hearings. We had 4 of them, April 26th, May 14th, May 15th, and May 24th. Chair recognizes Kathleen Pahinui.
Thank you, Chair, board members, and Manager Lau. Today, we just want to give you a brief update on public input that we've been receiving on the outreach process. As previously mentioned, we held 4 public hearings out in the various areas of the community, the last one being last Thursday in Mililani. We had a very basic, very brief agenda. We did separate out questions and answers from testimony, so questions and answers could cover a wide range of topics, which they did, but testimony was supposed to be focused strictly on the water rates itself, and we did not answer any questions in the testimony, but we did in the Q&A section of it. This is kind of the basic layout. This is from Mission Memorial. We had about several stations on rates, pipes, and capital improvement where we could interact with the public before and after the meeting and provide them with additional information that may have not made it into the presentation. And thank you, Board Chair, for coming to a couple of our meetings and welcoming our community. So as in summary, we had about 65 attendees come to the meetings. They will all be televised on Alelo as well as being posted onto our website at a in the next couple of weeks. During the question and answers, we covered a wide range of topics, but they generally fell into several buckets, such as desalinization, development, including monster homes, and then climate change came up at almost every single meeting. We only had 4 speakers at all 4 meetings, pretty much 1 per meeting, that opposed the water rates. And then we did have 1 couple that came to our Kapolei Holly meeting, and they were ready to duke it out with our manager over here. And at the end of the meeting, the lady said that she was very impressed with the presentation, so impressed that we actually changed her mind, and she was gonna go to work the next day and let her coworkers know that this was really a good thing. So kudos to the team for all their hard work and that went into putting the presentation together. In general, we got a lot of positive feedback overall, even from the people who opposed the water rates. They felt that we had come out to the community, we had done our job, and we were being very transparent, and they appreciated that. We also have so far received about 22 written comments and telephone comments that will all be published on our website in a table that we're putting together. We've also done additional public outreach to the neighborhood board. As of last week, we've done 8 neighborhood board presentations. We have 7 more to go, and we may have some going into July. If someone wants a presentation, we're gonna do it. We're not gonna say no. So far, we've reached close to 300 people just through the neighborhood board alone, and the reaction has been very positive overall. They've asked some qualifying questions, just asking for explanations on the tiers. But pretty much everyone's very supportive of what we're doing. We've also reached out to 10 special interest groups, Honolulu Board of Realtors, Chamber of Commerce, AARP, Freshwater Council, and we will continue to do that. We're gonna be meeting with the golf course managers very shortly. We had 6 city council briefings. We will also be doing a briefing to the cabinet on June 19th, and we had extensive outreach through the media. Ernie had the pleasure of being on 13 radio interviews on TV.
It was not easy.
We had him on KHON, and then Pearl Johnson. Any of you know Pearl from the League of Women Voters. We were on Olelo for that. And so far, as of last week, we've had 567 page views of our rates page, of which 417 were unique visits. So it means the message is getting out there. People are going. We would like to have more extensive outreach, but you know, we do what we can, and we will continue to reach out to people as and if you have any groups that you want us to speak, let me know. Right now, we're in the public outreach process, the big yellow arrow. We will continue doing this, as I mentioned, technically through June 30th, but again, if anyone wants us to come and present or wants to send in comments, we will continue to accept comments. Our 4-page Water Matters newsletter will be going out in all of our bills starting this coming month, and that will come through the end of July. Any questions?
Members, any questions?
At this point, we intend to come back in June to update the board on further outreach efforts and also present to the board the minutes of the public hearings so the board can see the minutes. 4 public hearings in a very short period of time. It takes a lot of effort to put those minutes together, so we weren't able to get it for today's meeting, but we are going to be sharing that with you at next month's meeting. We're also hoping, as you look on the schedule, that the board, if the board is comfortable in June, at the June board meeting, to move it forward to a possible public hearing to be held in July of this year for potential adoption of the proposed water rates and charges. Any questions on the schedule? I guess I'd like to point out that one key component is the blue box on the top there, the Water Master Plan, the 30-year capital program or infrastructure investment plan, the long-range financial plan, the stakeholder advisory group. We actually had stakeholder members come out to all 4 public hearings. The customer surveys and the board's guidance in providing the guardrails on proposed water rates have been foundational pieces to this effort, so just want to express my appreciation. And also my appreciation to our team at BWS, the communications office, all the divisions and offices of the Board of Water Supply were represented at all public hearings. And also, we're going to the winds for 4 corners of this island to go out to neighborhood board meetings, so everybody's taking a shot at that, an opportunity to educate our customers and be very transparent about this proposal. Thank you.
Kapoy had a question?
Or just a sort of combined question, comment. First, I just wanted to echo what Ernie said. I really thank the whole team. I mean, this really has been a CACO effort, and I've gotten incredible feedback from people who've participated. I was able to see Ernie and Barry's presentation at the Freshwater Council, and it inspired lively discussion and debate, but I think everybody came away in support, given the information that was shared. My one question was, all of the public hearings were held in the evening, And while I appreciate all the extra outreach for neighborhood boards and that sort of thing, I was wondering whether any thought was given to doing a webcast or something during another time of the day, like during lunch or something else. Just
Well, we could
wondering.
certainly look into it. The thing, it's kind of interesting. Government gets criticized because most of our meetings are during the day. So we made that deliberate effort to do the evening meetings. One thing, so we could certainly look at a potential webcast and see what we could do, if that is the board's will. But we really did focus on the evenings because that's usually our criticism, is that the only time people would have to do it would be here at 2 o'clock on usually a Monday afternoon, so,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the outreach you folks have done has been really great, especially all of the special interest group presentations and to the neighborhood board, so I don't feel like it's necessary, I just wanted to ask.
But a good suggestion, and definitely for the next time, we're definitely gonna look at that. And I just also wanna give a big shout out to my team, who worked extremely hard, set out the setup, and to all the other division heads who helped with setup and tear down. It was truly a group effort.
I'd like to also thank the board chair for coming out to two of the 4 public hearings in the evenings and doing a great job.
And if there are no further questions, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Cooper.
Okay,
And I, board members, I'm just going to, although this is the proposed rate package that we've been discussing and that we had public hearings on, there are some other additional fees that we are looking at developing, and we just want to give you an update on that. This is primarily the impact fees or the water system facility charges. This is somewhat different than the normal rate proposed, than the charges in the rate proposal, which are often monthly and usage fees. The water system facility charge is a one-time fee for new customers or developers when they initially connect to the water system, and it is to actually to buy into the capacity or the additional capacity that they're requiring from the water system. We are planning to, we still have some additional analysis to do on some of these, and we're also going to do some additional outreach to the stakeholders, especially to the agricultural group, because some of the structure and the analysis of these fees has changed a lot. And then we'll also be coming back to the board for your input and to update you on that analysis and that outreach that we have, and seek the board's input on guardrails or suggestions on how to proceed. We plan on doing this later in the summer, after we've adopted the proposed rate package. We'll be coming back to you, and then, you know, let's see, so yeah, in the July-September area, and then move hopefully toward adoption of the new water system facility charges by the end of the year.
the last time the water system facilities charge actually had a major update was in the early 1990s, around 93, when they did a study in 1993. So it's been quite a while since these charges, these capacity charges have been updated. Joe, anything else?
And then also we have the proposed subsidies. Our deputy manager is the expert on these, and I'll let her speak.
So I know we kind of bounced back. We talked about the water system facilities charge coming up in the next few months, more discussion on that. But this goes back to the water rate, proposed water rate package. These are the waivers that potentially could be there to support affordable housing unit developments, homeless housing units, and also retrofit of residential fire sprinklers in apartment buildings that don't have those systems. I'm gonna let Ellen provide the explanation of this table here.
Good afternoon, Chair and Diane, board members. Previously, one of the information that was given regarding the subsidies were based on numbers that we had gotten from the DPP, Department of Housing, Department of Community Services, and Homeless. and it was showing the total number of count. And I apologize for not actually putting that particular slide up, but then just to kind of refresh your memory, it averaged about 950 units per year, and it's a combination of the single-family, multi-unit, and homeless for roughly $1.4 million in potential waivers to our water systems facilities charge. So that'll give you an idea of what was presented in the past. What you see up here on the screen today is if we limited the amount of units to 500, what kind of subsidies would we be looking at? And what I ended up doing is going back to take a look at the estimated fixture units per dwelling unit for each of the different classes, so single family, multi-unit, and homeless. So for each water facilities charged per dwelling unit, you see the corresponding numbers. Estimate-wise, we're thinking about maybe 10 single-family units per year, 35 of the homeless per year, and then the rest would be made up of multifamily. And that's actually the trend that we've been seeing, that you'll see a lot more of the multi-unit development for affordable housing. So totaling that up, for 500 units, we're estimating about $931,000 plus. And I also did put in the sprinkler retrofit. Now that one was a little bit more difficult to calculate, but essentially there's about 150 potential units or potential projects that may need sprinkler retrofit. And these were identified by the Department of Planning and Permitting. Of that, 25%, they already, we verified that they do have a meter for fire service, so they probably will not need to put in another one. Based on the last ordinance that was passed by City Council, fire sprinkler is going to be, they're giving an option to the association whether or not they would want to put in a fire sprinkler. And based on that, because of the cost, DPP and the HFD, fire department, is thinking maybe about 20 to 40% may take advantage of that because of the cost. So putting all that information together, we're estimating about 40,000 plus per year of the homeowner association that may come in for a meter that potentially we would waive. So putting that all together, 500 units and the sprinkler retrofit annually, we're estimating 971,000. And then that's based on 500 units. And originally we had said the city was estimating 950 units based on the last numbers that they had given to us in January, and that would be about 1.4 million. So that kind of gives you the range.
So just if I could add some things for the board to consider in the thoughts leading up to maybe a decision in June at the next board meeting are a few things. I know there was discussion also insulation charge versus water system facility charge and impact fee. But the larger cost that a developer faces is really the impact fee. And we've heard from developers in various meetings that this is more of a real incentive for them to try to develop their affordable housing or homeless projects. The insulation charge is a much smaller charge. So one idea is to kind of focus on the water system facilities charge. It's also easier to document and calculate based on building plans submitted to us. And we can calculate the fixture unit counts for the affordable units and the homeless units. The other thing to think about is perhaps a cap of number of units per year. That could be a mix of single family, multi-family, multi-unit, and homeless. And in this example, it's 500 units. Or the other way to look at it is a possible dollar cap on an annual basis. And then if I could suggest the other thing for the board to consider thinking about is making this program exist only for 5 years. So it goes with the proposed water rates, which are good for 5 years, but what's the difference between the water rates and these charges? We need to say that this program would sunset at the end of 5 years and not be automatically carried forward until we adopt new rates to supersede this or to formally eliminate it. So some items for consideration by the board. Ellen, you want to add anything else?
No, although I guess I did want to just give you a context. When we're talking about fixtures, oh, there. Fixtures, sorry about that. Fixtures per dwelling units, this 20 is the minimum that we have for a single-family house. 9 and 8 for multi-unit and homeless. The minimum that we've seen in a unit is 5.5 fixture units, and that's like a shower, a lavatory, a kitchen sink. So that's kind of like the minimum that you have. So the multi-unit, there was a whole range, so that's like from a studio up to like a 3-bedroom. So that kind of gives you an idea what we're looking at when we talk about fixture units. Yes.
Well, even if we're using fixture units in the budget, though, wouldn't it be helpful to have some sort of, or give you folks an alternative some amount, right? So that we could include that in the budget and then leave it up to the staff's discretion, like 500 fixture units for X amount of dollars. And that way you folks could have, especially since this is the first time that it's being done, have a little bit more flexibility in how it rolls out to make sure it's working.
That actually might complicate it a little bit more because of the variety that you see in fixture units. So if we just go by unit, then it's kind of like an average of the entire development. Yeah, because even the 9 and the 8, those are averages that I had to go back and take a look, because for the, I guess for the mixed use, that's the market and the affordable, you will have a whole range, because some of the market value, they'll be just elegant.
Just want to be
units.
clear, what's maybe being proposed is only the affordable units, not the market unit and not the commercial mixed use that may be in part of the project. The homeless one is a little bit challenging because that might be a room with no bathroom, no sink, and there might be a common kitchen area, a common shower, restroom facilities, common laundry area. So homeless units can be a little bit more kind of a different approaches.
Yeah. The other thing I think that when you come back, talk about is that the council passed 18-1, the law is 18-1, I forgot what the bill's number, 59 I think it was.
Bill 59 was the incentives
Yeah,
bill.
and it has a definition, and I think we should lock into that definition.
Okay.
So we're not doing more than the other departments or less than. And I think as I recall, it's like 80% AMI for rentals
Yes.
and 120%
Yeah.
AMI for sale units, which
Yeah.
is below
So,
the market.
yeah, we can take a look at it, because I know that bill went to several iterations.
I don't, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure what they ended up with, but yeah, definitely we can make sure that it corresponds to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts?
This is just for information at this point. Probably next month or in July is when we're gonna fully adopt.
Right, in June, we'll come back to the board, probably with a more fleshed out proposal here as part of the draft rate package. When we went out to the public hearings, we did acknowledge and disclose to everybody that these are being considered. We did not provide details though. We kind of kept it somewhat open to allow for flexibility for board decision.
Okay, any further questions, members? Okay, thank you very much. And before we move on to the next item, I just wanted to personally thank all of the people involved. A lot of you here in this room today in the gallery were there at all of these public hearings, and it was great to see all of you putting in the extra time during the evenings, away from your families and other personal commitments, and it really takes a team, and I'm glad we went through that.
Mahalo.
Next item for information is the CIP quarterly update. Mr. Takaki.
Good afternoon, Chair Andaya, board members. This is the quarterly capital improvement program status report for all divisions as of March 31st, 2018. You see on the very end of the report, on the first page, the table shows just under $25 million was encumbered on a total project budget of $112.8 million. And then the second page is the detail of the awards and the completions. There was one construction award and one design award and one construction completion and one design completion in the third quarter.
Okay, members, any questions?
No?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Takaki. Next item is the recruitment status update. This will be given, Chair recognizes Michelle Thomas.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. I'm here to present the quarterly report for the period of February 2018 to April 2018, which is the last quarter. During this time period, we had 16 new hires, 5 promotions, 3 transfers, 3 separations, and 35 new approvals to fill, which is shown on your first graph. And then there is on the third table, which indicates the recruitment and separation status. It is important to note that during this time period, we had very few retires, which is typical for this period of time during the year, because at the beginning of the year, generally, we have very little retirements. Is there any questions?
Members, any questions? Okay, thank you for the report. Next up is a status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. We have Barry Usagawa.
Mr. Chair and members, there was one aquifer index well, Wailua, in the caution low groundwater status for April. It was only in the caution by ½ inch, so the aquifer is still pretty thick there. Production, because of the high rainfall we've been having, dropped to 127 million gallons per day. The rainfall index for April was 168% of normal. That's huge. February, by the way, was 187% of normal. So those 2 months alone picked up a lot of rainfall and a lot of recharge. The 5-month moving average, again, above normal, 124%. No drought conditions, no dry conditions on Oahu. And the National Weather Service forecasts still an above normal rainfall for the rest of May. Other than that, water levels continue to remain high and even increasing on the windward side. And that's my report.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you for the report. Next up is the water main repair report for April 2018. Chair recognizes Mike Fouquet. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair Andaya, members of the board. Just one report on during the month of April, we had 26 main breaks. We had 2 significant main breaks. First occurred on April 5th. The 20-inch that occurred on Dole Street. This main is approximately, based upon our records, it's 90 years old, so I can say it's into this life. The second main break occurred on April 17th, Farrington Highway, the 24-inch main that serves roughly 60% of the water that's needed for the leeward coast. This main break on Farrington, we were kind of lucky because the main break occurred in the shoulder area, so our impact to traffic was really, we did impact, but not as severely as was in the previous main breaks. This was a 24-inch PVC pipe again. Our leak detection did about 30 miles of a survey looking for leaks. I don't have the number of leaks they found, but I know that usually we find something. Okay, any questions?
Members? Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the end of our regular session. I'd like to go into executive session. Could I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to go into executive session. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Right, let's prepare for executive session.